She had no experience, no grand plans, just a simple $100 purchase for a hidden underground bunker that no one believed was worth anything. Emma Lawson, a woman out of her depth, thought it was just a quirky investment, an oddity in a world obsessed with bigger and better things. But as time passed, something extraordinary began to unfold beneath the dirt and dust of that forgotten space, something that would not only silence the skeptics, but change her life forever. Before we dive into Emma's unbelievable story, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're into stories that inspire, challenge the odds, and leave you in awe, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's episode? It's even more unbelievable than this one. Let's get started. It all started one late afternoon, when Emma Lawson, sitting in her small but cozy apartment in the heart of Hollow Creek, saw an ad that caught her eye. Hidden away beneath a pile of outdated newspapers and forgotten garage sale flyers, it was simple and almost laughable. $100 for a hidden bunker must haul yourself. Emma had never considered herself a risk-taker. Her life was one of comfort. In routine, she worked a 9-to-5 job at a marketing firm, spent her weekends browsing antique shops, and rarely deviated from the predictable. But something about that ad intrigued her. Perhaps it was the idea of something buried beneath the earth, untouched and forgotten. Or maybe it was the idea that for just $100, she could own a little secret. Curiosity gnawed at her until she couldn't ignore it. The next morning, she called the number on the flyer. The voice on the other end was gruff and impatient. "Yeah, it's still there. Come by if you want it." Emma didn't hesitate. She grabbed the first spare afternoon she had and drove out to the location just outside of town. The address led her to a dilapidated farmhouse on a stretch of land that seemed as if time had forgotten it. The house, weathered and worn, looked like it had once been a lively place but now stood silent, surrounded by overgrown weeds and sagging fences. A man in his late 50s greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You sure you want this? It's nothing special," he warned, as he led her to the back of the property, where a rusted metal hatch lay half buried under a pile of debris. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The hatch looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. The metal was cracked and coated with dirt, the edges frayed. For a moment, she hesitated. Was this really worth $100? "All right," she said, swallowing her doubts. "I'll take it." The man handed her a set of old keys, then went back to his house without another word. Emma stood alone in the fading afternoon light, staring at the hatch. It wasn't a glamorous purchase. There was no shiny metal, no grand entrance, just a hidden piece of the past. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more beneath the dirt, something waiting to be uncovered. As she turned the key and pried open the rusty hatch, the air beneath it smelled of earth and age, like a secret too old to remember. The staircase that led down into the darkness seemed like an invitation, though Emma had no idea what she was about to awaken. The following afternoon, Emma returned to the bunker, her curiosity now a constant, nagging companion. Her first visit had been filled with doubt, but that had quickly shifted into something else, an insatiable need to understand the mysterious space beneath the earth. She had spent the night thinking about it, wondering why she felt this strange pull toward it, as though it were calling her to uncover its secrets. Now, as she walked down the dirt path toward the hatch, the thought of what she might find consumed her. The hatch looked almost the same as it had when she first arrived, a rusted, forgotten relic buried under debris. But this time, there was no hesitation in her step. She was ready to face whatever lay hidden within. She had the key now, literally and figuratively. With a deep breath, she inserted the rusted key into the lock and turned it. The creaking sound as the hatch swung open sent a shiver through her spine, and she felt an odd mixture of excitement and apprehension. Emma grabbed her flashlight from her backpack and descended the stairs slowly, careful not to trip on the uneven steps. The air was damp and cool, a stark contrast to the warm afternoon outside. With each step, the sounds of the world above seemed to fade away, replaced by the heavy silence of the underground space. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she stood still for a moment, letting her eyes adjust to the low light. The space was unlike anything she had imagined. She had expected a small, cramped cellar, but instead, she found a relatively large room, its concrete floor cracked and covered in dust. The walls were lined with old wooden shelves, some of which were overflowing with faded boxes and random knickknacks. Old tools and metal parts were scattered haphazardly, as though they had been abandoned in a hurry. On the far wall, there was a large map, pinned up with faded tacks. The map was unlike anything she'd ever seen, covered in strange symbols and coordinates, some of which seemed familiar, while others were completely foreign. Emma's pulse quickened as she stepped closer to the map. The more she looked at it, the more she realized that it wasn't a simple map of the town or the surrounding area. It was something much more intricate, almost like a treasure map. The more she examined the symbols, the more she felt the weight of history pressing down on her. Whoever had created this map had known something important. She traced a finger across the map, following the lines and symbols with growing curiosity. One of the coordinates stood out, Hollow Creek. That was the town she lived in. But beneath that, in small, delicate handwriting, were additional instructions. Find the key, unlock the door, discover what lies beneath. Emma swallowed hard. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but the sense that this was bigger than she had initially thought began to settle in her chest. She wasn't just dealing with an old, forgotten space. This was something deliberate, something planned. Turning away from the map, she noticed a small wooden box on one of the shelves, partially hidden behind a stack of old magazines. Emma approached it, her hands trembling as she carefully lifted it from its resting place. The box was surprisingly light, but its contents, whatever they were, felt important. She slid open the lid, revealing a set of yellowed papers, all neatly folded and tied together with a fraying piece of string. There were no markings or labels, but Emma instinctively felt that these papers held the answers she was searching for. With a growing sense of anticipation, she unfolded the papers. The first sheet was a hand-drawn diagram, filled with strange symbols and notes. The second page was a journal entry, written in spidery handwriting, but it was the third sheet that made her breath catch. It was a letter, addressed to the next keeper. Emma's heart raced as she read the words. To the one who finds this, you have uncovered the first layer of what lies beneath. But you must understand this is not just a bunker. It is a gateway. What you find here will change the course of history, if you have the courage to see it through. Emma's mind raced. This was far more than just a forgotten space. It was a key, and she was the one chosen to unlock it. But what exactly had she uncovered? And more importantly, who had left this for her to find? The weight of the discovery began to settle in her chest, and she realized that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. She closed the box, her hands shaking, and placed it carefully back on the shelf. She knew one thing for certain now. The journey ahead would be nothing like what she had imagined. The bunker was no longer just a relic. It was a doorway, and Emma was determined to walk through it. The following week was a whirlwind for Emma, as the weight of the discoveries from the bunker and the barn sank in. The pieces of the puzzle seemed to be multiplying, but the answers remained just out of reach. The blueprints, the map, the strange symbols, it was all connected somehow, but Emma couldn't yet see how the dots connected. Her obsession with solving the mystery was growing, and with it, her determination. Greg had been a helpful ally, offering both knowledge and experience. Together, they'd scoured every corner of the barn, uncovering more items linked to Holloway's life. The blueprints were just the beginning. Old journals, scraps of notes, and mechanical parts strewn about the barn told stories of experiments, inventions, and calculations, all pointing to something far bigger than Emma had anticipated. But no one, not even Greg, had any idea what Holloway was truly working on. There were no clear answers, just more questions. One late evening, after a long day of research, Emma sat alone in her apartment, sifting through the papers she had brought home from the barn. Her mind was buzzing, piecing together fragments of information. The blueprints she had found were detailed, but they didn't make sense on their own. They lacked context, and Emma couldn't help but feel that something important was missing, like a key detail that would tie everything together. Her eyes kept drifting back to the map. The symbols, though unfamiliar, seemed to hold a deeper meaning. She stared at them long enough that they started to blur into each other, creating new patterns. That's when it hit her: the coordinates. The map was more than just a set of directions. It was a guide to something. She had thought it was only pointing to locations, but now she realized it was also pointing to dates. The lines on the map, with their intersections and loops, matched up with important moments in history. Emma grabbed her phone and quickly typed in the numbers for the first set of coordinates. What she found was chilling. The first set of coordinates led to a location deep in the forest, just outside Hollow Creek, where an old, forgotten research facility had once been. The research center had been abandoned decades ago, its purpose unknown. But in the late 1942, just after World War II, Richard Holloway had worked there. Emma scrolled through the information she found online, her pulse quickening with every word. The facility had been closed under mysterious circumstances, and the government had issued a gag order to prevent anyone from discussing its existence. Emma felt the walls closing in. It was all beginning to make sense, but she was still missing something crucial. The blueprints in the barn weren't just drawings of mechanical devices. They were part of a much larger system, a system that had been built at the research facility. Holloway had been involved in more than just inventing technology. He had been working on something that could change the very nature of the world. She picked up her phone and called Greg, unable to contain her excitement. "Greg, I found something. The research facility. It's real. Holloway was part of something huge. This isn't just about some old bunker. It's about an entire project. And I think we're just scratching the surface." Greg's voice came through the phone, slow and measured. "What do you mean, Emma? What exactly did you find?" "The facility. It was linked to a secret government project after the war. I think Holloway was developing something there. Something powerful. And I think it's all connected to what we found in the bunker." Greg didn't speak for a moment, and Emma could hear the sound of pages flipping on his end. Then, he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "If that's true, Emma, you need to be careful. If Holloway was involved with the government on something this big, there could be people still watching, people who don't want this secret to come out." The weight of his words hit her like a ton of bricks. She had known it wouldn't be easy, but now the stakes had been raised. What Holloway had been involved in was bigger than anything she had imagined. And Emma realized, with a chilling certainty, that she wasn't the only one looking for answers. With the discovery of the old research facility and the increasing sense that there was more to Holloway's legacy than she had ever imagined, Emma knew she couldn't do this alone anymore. The stakes were higher than ever, and the deeper she delved, the more dangerous it seemed to get. She needed help, someone who could add perspective, someone with expertise beyond Greg's knowledge of local history and the artifacts they had already uncovered. Emma had a feeling that the real answers lay somewhere in the world of technology and innovation, and for that, she would need someone who could help decode Holloway's work. Her thoughts turned to Alex Mercer, a former colleague from her time at university. Alex had been a genius in her field, a tech whiz who specialized in cryptography and coding. They had lost touch after graduation, but Emma knew Alex would be the perfect person to help her understand the blueprints, the strange symbols, and perhaps even the cryptic messages Holloway had left behind. If anyone could crack the code, it was Alex. Emma spent the next few days attempting to track Alex down. She reached out through social media, sent a few emails, but received no reply. Undeterred, Emma called a mutual friend, desperate for any information. It wasn't long before she found out that Alex had recently relocated to a tech startup in a nearby city. Without wasting a moment, Emma booked a ticket, determined to find Alex and make her aware of the gravity of what she was dealing with. A few days later, Emma arrived in the city, and as soon as she saw Alex again, it was as though no time had passed. Alex had the same quick wit, the same sharp eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, and the same fiery passion for technology that Emma had admired so much back in school. "I can't believe you're here," Alex said, her voice laced with surprise and curiosity. "What's going on? You haven't contacted me in years." Emma hesitated, unsure of how to begin. The story was so big, so complex. How could she explain that a small, forgotten bunker in a town had led her down a rabbit hole of government secrets, hidden research facilities, and inventions that could alter the course of history? She took a deep breath. "It's hard to explain, but I need your help. Something's happened, and I've uncovered something I don't think I can handle alone. It's related to a man named Richard Holloway, an inventor from the 1942nd. I found some of his work, and I believe it's part of a much larger project, one that's still very much alive." Alex raised an eyebrow, intrigued, but cautious. "Go on." Emma told Alex everything. The bunker, the blueprints, the map, the abandoned research facility, and how it all seemed to tie back to Holloway's cryptic work. As she spoke, Alex's expression shifted from disbelief to fascination. She was hooked. "I don't know how you managed to dig this up, but you've got my attention," Alex said, her mind clearly racing through possibilities. "I've worked with classified tech before, but this sounds like something entirely different. If Holloway was involved in government projects, especially after the war, this could be way bigger than anything we've seen before." Emma could feel the weight of Alex's words settle in. The more she spoke, the more she realized just how much she didn't know. But now, with Alex's expertise, Emma felt a glimmer of hope that they might be able to unravel the mystery together. "So, what's the plan?" Emma asked, eager for direction. Alex stood up, pacing as she thought. "We need to go through the work you've already collected. The blueprints, the diagrams, the journal entries. We need to decode the symbols and the messages. If there's anything hidden in them, I'll find it. But we can't work on this alone. We'll need more help, probably from some more specialized people, especially if we're dealing with something this advanced." Emma nodded, feeling a surge of relief. For the first time since she'd discovered the bunker, she didn't feel so alone. Alex would help her crack the code, and together, they would uncover the full scope of Holloway's work. But as the hours passed, and Emma and Alex pored over the blueprints, something started to nag at the back of Emma's mind. It wasn't just the technology they had discovered that was important. It was the fact that the government had been involved, the secrecy that surrounded it, and the deep connections Holloway had to the higher powers at play. "I don't like this," Emma said after a long silence. "If we're right about this, and if Holloway was working on something that powerful, there are people who will stop at nothing to keep it hidden. We need to be careful. We can't trust everyone." Alex stopped pacing, her face turning serious. "You're right. If this technology falls into the wrong hands, it could change everything. We can't afford to make a mistake." The gravity of the situation had just grown heavier. They weren't just solving a historical mystery. They were sitting on something far more dangerous, and Emma knew it was only a matter of time before someone came looking for them. Someone who didn't want the truth to come out. Days passed quickly, as Emma and Alex worked tirelessly to decipher the blueprints and symbols they had uncovered. The air in the small apartment was thick with concentration, the soft hum of Alex's laptop accompanying the rapid rustling of papers as they scoured every inch of the documents. Despite the overwhelming amount of information, they were making progress, piece by piece. The blueprints were slowly starting to make sense, sort of. At first, they appeared to be simple mechanical schematics for an engine, but as they examined them more closely, they noticed something odd. Parts of the designs didn't match anything they had ever seen before. There were connections between components that suggested something much more intricate than a mere machine. The diagrams seemed to describe a system that didn't just run on power, but seemed to generate and manipulate energy in ways that defied conventional understanding. This is insane," Alex muttered, squinting at the blueprints. "It's like Holloway was trying to create an energy source, not just a generator, but something that could power entire cities. Look at this, these lines here are connected to." She trailed off as she flipped to the next page of the blueprint, her fingers trembling. This could be a self-sustaining power system. If it works, it could change everything. This is what Holloway was building. Emma leaned over Alex's shoulder, her heart pounding in her chest. She had always known there was something significant about Holloway's work, but now the full scope of it was beginning to reveal itself. This wasn't just about technology or innovation. Holloway had been working on something that could potentially alter the fabric of society, something that could change the very way the world used and thought about energy. "I knew it," Emma whispered. "This is what he was hiding. This is what the government was trying to protect. It's a new kind of energy, a limitless source that could render fossil fuels and traditional power sources obsolete. No wonder they covered it up." Alex nodded, clearly engrossed in the designs. "But this is the problem, right? This energy source, if it's real, could put everything at risk. The government, they'd lose control. There's no way they'd want this kind of technology in the hands of the public. They'd rather bury it than let it get out." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. The more they uncovered, the more she realized just how far-reaching Holloway's project had been. This was bigger than anything she had imagined. But it also explained why the bunker, the blueprints, and even the map had been hidden away for so long. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure that this knowledge remained a secret. The project was meant to stay buried, far from prying eyes. But that didn't change the fact that they had found it, and now they had to decide what to do with it. "I don't know if I should be scared or excited," Emma said, staring at the glowing screen in front of her. "If this energy system is real, it could change everything. But who else is looking for it? Who else knows about this?" Alex sat back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "We're not the only ones who know now. If the government was involved in this project, then someone's bound to be watching. They don't just abandon something like this without consequences. If they've kept it secret all these years, it's because they didn't want anyone to find it. We've got to be careful, Emma. This isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about what happens when it gets exposed." Emma's mind raced as she processed everything they had discovered. The government's role, the danger of this technology, the potential consequences of releasing it. It was overwhelming. But she knew one thing for sure. They couldn't let Holloway's work be buried again. Not after everything they had learned. "I can't just walk away from this," Emma said, her voice steady with resolve. "We have to make sure this information gets out. The world needs to know what Holloway was working on. But we have to be careful. We need to find a way to expose this without putting ourselves in danger." Alex gave her a grim look. "You're right, but we're going to need help. There's no way we can handle this on our own. We need to find someone who has the right connections, someone who can protect us while we figure out what to do with all of this." Emma nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She didn't know who they could turn to, but one thing was clear. This was no longer just about solving a mystery. It was about ensuring that Holloway's work and the power it held didn't fall into the wrong hands. The decision to take their discovery to someone who could protect them was not an easy one. Emma knew that finding someone trustworthy would be just as important as cracking the code of Holloway's work. She spent the next few days trying to gather more information, doing her best to piece together what Holloway had left behind. But even as she analyzed the blueprints and read through the journals, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. It wasn't until she revisited the bunker, hoping for clarity, that she realized the missing piece was right in front of her. She had passed by it several times before, without fully understanding its significance. A locked door, tucked behind a large stack of old crates. It had been hidden from view by years of neglect, its entrance nearly covered by debris. Emma had always assumed it was just another part of the old bunker that had been forgotten or deemed unimportant. But now, standing in front of it, she knew that it was more than just a simple storage closet. It was something else, a secret room waiting to be discovered. "Alex, I think I found something," Emma said, her voice tight with anticipation as she examined the door. She ran her hand over the rusted metal, tracing the outline of the lock. "This is it. This is what we've been missing." Alex had been hesitant to return to the bunker, her nerves fraying at the idea of continuing down this increasingly dangerous path. But when Emma called her with this discovery, Alex's curiosity got the better of her, and she agreed to meet at the bunker the next morning. The door, though old and weathered, looked sturdy enough to hide something of value. Emma had found an old crowbar in the corner, and after a few attempts, she managed to pry the lock loose. The moment the door creaked open, a thick, musty smell filled the air. The room beyond was dark, the only light coming from the shaft of sunlight that slipped through a crack in the ceiling. Emma stepped inside first, feeling the cool air of the room envelope her. Her heart pounded with every step, a mix of fear and excitement building within her chest. The space was much smaller than the main area of the bunker, but it felt infinitely more significant. The walls were lined with strange industrial shelving units, filled with more blueprints, old machinery, and numerous files that appeared to be decades old. On one wall, a large, faded map of the world was pinned up, with several locations marked in red ink, some familiar, but many others that Emma didn't recognize. What stood out the most, however, was a metal table in the center of the room, covered in dust and various tools. There, in the center of it all, was a large, translucent object, the same orb Emma had found in the hidden room of the barn. This is it," Emma whispered, her breath catching. "This is the source, the power source." Alex joined her, looking around the room with wide eyes. "What is this? This is not just a bunker anymore. This looks like a lab, like a place where Holloway was conducting experiments. But why hide all of this?" Emma carefully approached the orb, her fingers hovering just above it. The room seemed to hum with a subtle energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. It was as if the object was calling to her, urging her to come closer. She took a tentative step forward and reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. The orb pulsed, its light shifting from a soft glow to a more intense radiance. Emma gasped, pulling her hand back in surprise. The energy in the room seemed to intensify, almost as if the orb were reacting to her presence. The once dormant machinery around her started to hum faintly, and the scattered papers on the table fluttered as if moved by an unseen force. "Emma," Alex said, her voice filled with awe and concern. "You need to be careful. That thing, it's not just a relic. It's alive." Emma nodded, her heart racing. She could feel the truth of Alex's words in her bones. The orb was more than just a piece of technology. It was the key, the source of everything Holloway had worked on. But what was it? What did it do? And why had it been hidden away in this secret room, buried deep beneath the earth? Emma took a step back from the table, her mind spinning with questions. "I think Holloway was onto something big. This orb, these designs, the research facility, the government involvement. It all points to one thing. He was trying to harness something powerful, something that could change the world." Alex walked closer to the orb, her face a mixture of curiosity and caution. But why leave it behind? If Holloway had access to something like this, why not finish the work? Why hide it all away? Emma didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for sure. They had uncovered a part of Holloway's legacy that was far more dangerous and far-reaching than they could have imagined. And now, as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Emma realized that the hardest part was just beginning. What did they do with this knowledge? Who else would come after them for it? The door to the hidden room creaked behind them, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. She turned quickly, expecting to see nothing but shadows. But there was someone there. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, the dim light of the bunker casting a long shadow across the room. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she instinctively moved to stand in front of the orb. Alex, too, was frozen in place, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and alarm. The figure was tall, cloaked in a heavy coat that obscured most of his features, but the tone of his voice when he spoke sent a chill down Emma's spine. "I see you've found it," the stranger said, his voice low, calm, and deliberate. Emma's heart raced as she stared at him, her mind scrambling to process the situation. How long had he been standing there? She hadn't heard him approach. The door to the hidden room had creaked loudly when she opened it, yet somehow, this person had slipped past them, unnoticed. "Who are you?" Emma demanded, her voice shaking slightly but trying to sound firm. She wasn't sure whether to feel fear or curiosity, but one thing was certain: this person knew exactly what they had found. The man stepped forward, his face emerging from the shadows as he pulled back the hood of his coat. His features were sharp, eyes a pale blue that seemed almost too cold to be human. His hair was salt and pepper, and his face was lined with age, but there was a certain intensity in his gaze that made him look much younger than he appeared. He regarded Emma and Alex with an almost knowing expression, as though he had been expecting them. "My name is Nathaniel Cross," he said, his voice still soft but commanding. "And I've been watching you." "Watching us?" Emma repeated, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. "Why?" Cross's gaze flickered to the orb, his expression unreadable. "Because you're about to uncover something that shouldn't be uncovered. The work you've been digging into, it's not just Holloway's legacy. It's a Pandora's box that could destroy everything if it falls into the wrong hands, including yours." Emma stepped back instinctively, her hand still hovering near the orb. "What are you talking about? We've only just started uncovering Holloway's work. What's so dangerous about it?" Cross gave her a long, hard look. He seemed to weigh his next words carefully, as if deciding just how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke, his tone much more serious. "The orb, the technology, everything in this bunker, it's part of a project that was never meant to see the light of day. Holloway was not just an inventor. He was a part of something much larger, something that the government buried long ago. The power source he was working on? It's not a new form of energy. It's a weapon, a tool of mass destruction." Emma's blood ran cold at his words. She had suspected something sinister, but hearing it so plainly made her stomach turn. She glanced at Alex, whose face mirrored her own shock. "You're lying," Alex said quietly, though there was a trace of uncertainty in her voice. "Holloway's designs, they weren't about weapons. They were about energy. Sustainable energy." Cross shook his head slowly. "That's what Holloway wanted you to think. That's what they wanted you to think. But the truth is, what he was building was much darker. The government knew the risks. That's why they buried it, locked it away in places like this one." He looked around the room, as though measuring the full extent of their discoveries. "And now you've found it. It's not just a simple power source. It's a key to an entire system that could tip the balance of power in ways you can't even begin to understand." Emma felt a sinking feeling in her chest. She had always believed that the truth about Holloway's work would be a noble one, a revelation that would change the world for the better. But what if it wasn't? What if they had uncovered something that could bring about devastation rather than progress? "What do you want from us?" Emma asked, her voice shaky now. She had no idea whether she could trust this man, but she had no choice but to listen. If what he said was true, they were in far deeper than they had realized. "I'm here to stop you," Nathaniel Cross replied flatly. "I've spent years trying to keep this from getting out, and now that you've found it, I can't allow you to continue down this path. You don't understand the consequences of unlocking this power. Trust me. I'm trying to protect you." Emma shook her head, anger rising within her. "You can't just come in here and tell us what to do. We're already involved. This isn't about stopping us. It's about understanding what Holloway was working on and why it was hidden. People need to know. The world needs to know." Cross's expression darkened, and for the first time, Emma saw something dangerous flicker behind his eyes. "You don't know what you're dealing with. There are forces that would kill to keep this buried. People who would do anything to keep this from getting out. I'm trying to protect you from them, and from yourselves." Emma held her ground, her jaw clenched. She knew there was more at play here than he was letting on. But something about the way he spoke, the fear in his voice, the sense of urgency, made her hesitate. He wasn't lying, not completely. Whatever Holloway had been working on, whatever this orb was, it had far more potential for destruction than Emma had ever imagined. "You're not going to stop us," she said, her voice steely with determination. "We're going to finish what Holloway started. We owe it to him and to the world to see this through. Cross let out a slow, resigned sigh. Then you'll have to do it without me. But remember this. You're not just fighting against time or secrecy. You're fighting against something far darker. As the door creaked behind him, Cross turned and walked into the shadows, leaving Emma and Alex alone with the gravity of his words hanging heavy in the air. The tension in the bunker lingered long after Nathaniel Cross disappeared into the shadows, leaving only the echoes of his warning behind. Emma stood frozen for a moment, processing what he had said, and then turned to Alex, her mind racing. "You think he's telling the truth?" Emma asked, her voice low. Alex didn't answer immediately. She was still staring at the orb, her brow furrowed in thought. "I don't know, but there's something about him that felt genuine, like he's been involved in this for a long time." She paused, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table. But what if he's right? What if Holloway's work really was a weapon? Emma shook her head, her resolve hardening. "I can't believe that. I refuse to believe it. Holloway may have hidden things, but I don't think his work was meant for destruction. He was trying to change the world. He wanted to create something that could help people, not hurt them." Alex nodded slowly, though she still looked uncertain. "I want to believe that too, but Cross is right about one thing. We don't know what we're dealing with. If this is as dangerous as he says, there are people out there who will stop at nothing to take it from us. And we need to be ready for that." Emma's mind immediately jumped to the government, the ones who had buried Holloway's work in the first place. If Nathaniel Cross was telling the truth, and this was more than just a simple discovery, there were people out there who would do anything to protect the secret. They had already seen the lengths people would go to keep knowledge like this hidden. The stakes had never been higher. "We can't go back now," Emma said, determination in her voice. "We have to finish what we started. We can't let anyone silence this. The world needs to know the truth about Holloway's work." Alex sighed, glancing nervously around the room. "I agree, but we need to be careful. We can't just charge in blind. We don't even know who's looking for this or what they'll do to get it." Emma knew Alex was right. They couldn't let themselves get caught in the crossfire. The next steps had to be planned carefully. They needed allies, people who could help them protect what they had discovered and expose the truth without falling into the hands of those who would misuse it. "That's why we need to go to the research facility," Emma said suddenly. "The place Cross mentioned. If Holloway was involved there's a chance we'll find more answers and more clues about what the government's been hiding." Alex hesitated. "But the facility is abandoned. How do we know it'll still be standing? And if it is, how do we get in?" Emma didn't have all the answers, but the urgency in her chest told her they had to move quickly. "We get in, no matter what. This is our only shot." They gathered their things, taking the blueprints, the journal entries, and the mysterious orb with them. Emma was determined to uncover the full truth. And if Nathaniel Cross had been right, if there were people out there hunting them, they had no time to waste. The drive to the research facility was silent, the car humming along the empty road as Emma's thoughts swirled. What if Cross was right? What if they were walking into something far darker than they could comprehend? The thought gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. She couldn't back down now. Not after everything they had discovered. As they neared the facility, the once promising horizon now felt like a looming shadow. The building, though decayed, still stood tall against the skyline. Overgrown vines and rusted fences told the story of years left to rot, but the unmistakable presence of the facility, large, imposing, and suffocating, sent a shiver through Emma. The place was a remnant of something hidden, forgotten, and perhaps intentionally left behind. "We're here," Emma said quietly, the car slowing as they approached the entrance. The gates were rusty, barely hanging on their hinges, but the walls surrounding the facility were high and intimidating. As they got closer, Emma could see that there was no visible sign of any activity. Everything seemed abandoned. Still, she knew better than to assume they were alone. "Stay alert," she murmured to Alex, who nodded. They parked a few hundred yards from the facility, ensuring they weren't too close, but close enough to make a swift escape if needed. Emma took a deep breath, her mind focused. This was it, the moment that would either uncover everything or destroy what little they had left. The research facility loomed before them, its broken windows and cracked exterior, a haunting reminder of what had been lost. Emma had no idea what they were walking into, but she was certain of one thing: the answers they needed were inside. The two women walked toward the entrance, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they approached the crumbling doors, Emma felt a surge of anxiety, but it was quickly replaced by determination. They had come too far to turn back, but as she reached for the door handle, a voice behind her stopped her dead in her tracks. "You shouldn't be here." Emma froze. Slowly, she turned around, finding a figure standing in the shadows, their face hidden by the dark. "Who are you?" Emma demanded, her heart hammering in her chest. The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. It was Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel Cross stepped into the dim light, his face a mixture of resolve and concern. Emma felt a cold shiver run down her spine as his shadow stretched long across the crumbling walls of the research facility. She had hoped that she'd seen the last of him, but here he was, standing in front of them again. "You don't understand," Cross said, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "You need to turn back." Emma clenched her fists at her sides. "No, we're not turning back. Not after everything we've uncovered. Holloway's work, it has to come to light. The world needs to know the truth." Cross's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer. "The truth you're searching for is far more dangerous than you realize. You're not just uncovering Holloway's work, you're putting your lives at risk. There are people out there who will kill to keep this buried. They'll stop at nothing." Alex moved slightly in front of Emma, her body tense. "So what, Cross? You're telling us to walk away? You've been following us this whole time and now you want to stop us from finding out what Holloway was working on?" Cross didn't flinch, but there was something in his eyes that made Emma hesitate. It was the first time she had seen real emotion from him. "I've been trying to protect you," he said quietly. "I didn't want this for you. But I can't stop you if you're determined to go forward. Just know this: if you open that door, there's no turning back." The words hung heavy in the air. Emma and Alex exchanged a glance. There was no denying that Cross's warning was real. They had already uncovered so much secrets, buried deep within the walls of the bunker, the research facility, and the work of Holloway himself. But could they handle the truth of what lay inside this place? "You still haven't told us why you're helping us," Emma said, keeping her voice steady despite the uncertainty creeping into her chest. Cross hesitated. "I wasn't supposed to be involved in this. I was assigned to monitor the situation, to ensure it stayed buried. But once I realized you had found Holloway's work, I couldn't just stand by. There's more to this than you can even begin to understand. I don't want you to be pawns in a game that's far bigger than any of us." Emma's mind raced. Everything Cross had said, every warning, made it harder to discern the truth. Was he truly trying to protect them, or was there something he wasn't telling them? She could see it in his eyes, the weight of secrets he carried, secrets that had been buried for decades. "We're going in," Emma said, her voice firm. She wasn't backing down. "We have to finish this." Cross looked like he was about to protest again, but instead, he sighed deeply. "You're stubborn, I'll give you that. But if you're going in, you'll need this." He pulled a small metal key from his pocket and tossed it to Emma. She caught it in her hand, confused. "What's this for?" "The main vault," Cross said, his gaze unwavering. "If you want answers, it's in there. But remember, once you open it, everything changes." Emma held the key tightly in her hand. There was no turning back now. She could feel it in her gut. The moment they stepped inside, they were walking into the heart of a conspiracy that had been hidden for decades. The vault was the final piece of the puzzle, and she knew they couldn't leave without uncovering what it contained. "Stay behind us, Cross," Alex said. "We'll handle this ourselves." Cross seemed to consider her words for a long moment, before nodding slowly. "Fine. But I'm warning you, once that vault is open, you'll understand why I wanted to stop you. Just promise me this. Be prepared for what you're about to find." Ensa, without another word, Emma turned toward the rusted doors of the research facility. She and Alex made their way toward the main building, the key to the vault pressing against Emma's palm, like a silent reminder of the power they were about to unlock. Cross followed at a distance, his eyes dark with the weight of his warning. As they approached the main entrance, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened, all the secrets, all the dangers, all the mysteries they had uncovered. It all led here, to this final moment. And the questions that had consumed her, since she first stumbled upon that old bunker, now loomed larger than ever. What had Holloway truly been working on, and who was really pulling the strings behind the scenes? The door to the research facility creaked as it swung open, revealing the dark interior. The air was thick with dust, the walls covered in peeling paint and overgrown vines. But at the far end of the room, Emma could see a steel door, the vault. It was different from the rest of the facility. It was sturdy, reinforced, and locked with a high-tech security system. Emma approached the vault, her heart pounding in her chest. She slipped the key into the lock and turned it. The mechanism clicked, and the door groaned as it slowly opened, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. The room was lit only by the dim glow of their flashlights, but Emma's breath caught as she took in what lay before her. Inside the vault were rows of files, computers, and large machines, all encased in glass and sealed tight. But it was the centerpiece of the room that took Emma's breath away. On a raised platform in the center of the room sat a large, metallic object covered in a tarp. Emma approached it slowly, her hands trembling. She pulled the tarp away, revealing a machine that was nothing like she had ever seen before. It was complex, with gears, wires, and glowing lights, and it seemed to hum with energy as if it were alive. "This is it," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is what Holloway was trying to build." Alex stood beside her, her expression a mix of awe and fear. "What is it? What does it do?" Emma didn't have an answer. But as the machine hummed louder and the lights flickered, she knew one thing for sure. They had just uncovered something far more powerful than they ever imagined. The machine before Emma seemed to pulse with life, the soft hum growing louder as the lights flickered with increasing intensity. Her heart raced, her breath coming in short bursts, as her fingers hovered over the surface of the metallic object. It was like nothing she had ever seen, intricate, complex, and glowing with an eerie, almost hypnotic energy. The machine was massive, its components interwoven in ways that suggested it wasn't just a power source, but something far more profound, something that could alter the very fabric of reality. Emma reached out cautiously, her hand trembling as she brushed her fingers against the cold metal. The hum beneath her fingertips intensified, and suddenly, the room was bathed in a brilliant light. She jerked back, her mind spinning. This wasn't just a machine, it was a doorway, a conduit for something much larger than she had ever imagined. "What is this?" Alex whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear as she stepped closer to Emma. "What did Holloway build?" "I don't know," Emma admitted, feeling a chill creep up her spine. "But I think he was trying to create something bigger than just a power source. This feels like a key to something else, something far more dangerous." Just as Emma was about to step forward again, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from behind. She turned quickly, but it wasn't Cross this time. The new voice that rang out was cold, controlled, and unmistakably familiar. "You shouldn't have opened it." Emma's heart sank. Standing at the entrance to the vault room was a man she never thought she would see again, Nathaniel Cross. But he wasn't alone. There were two others with him, both clad in dark suits, their faces masked with an air of cold indifference. They moved quickly toward the center of the room, their eyes never leaving the machine. "You didn't think you'd be allowed to walk away from this, did you?" Cross continued, his voice now sharper, more authoritative. "You've stumbled onto something far bigger than you realize. This machine, this device, is more than just Holloway's legacy. It's the key to an entire network, a system that could reshape the future." Emma's blood ran cold. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "What is this?" What is this machine? Cross didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped forward, his face hardening. I warned you. I tried to stop you from finding this. But now that you've opened the door, you've unleashed something that cannot be put back. Holloway wasn't just working on a power source. He was building a weapon. A weapon that could control the world's energy supply, manipulate economies, governments, and entire nations. And now, you've triggered it. Emma's mind reeled, trying to process what he was saying. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This wasn't just about Holloway's genius. It was a weapon, one that could change the world in ways that no one could predict. Why didn't you tell us the truth? Emma asked, her voice rising with frustration. You've been following us, watching us every step of the way. Why not just come clean? Cross's expression softened, but only for a moment. Because I couldn't risk it, he admitted quietly. The people I work for, the people who know about this, they've been trying to contain it for decades. Holloway was a part of a secret program that went far beyond anything we knew. And now, with you opening this vault, you've made it possible for them to take control. To control everything. Who are these people? Alex asked, her voice sharp. What do they want with the machine? Cross looked at her, his eyes dark. They've been waiting for someone to unlock this, waiting for the right time to take control. And now that you've activated it, there's no going back. Emma felt a surge of anger. You're telling me that you've been part of this all along? You've known about this machine, about this power, and you let us think it was just about finding a lost inventor's work? Cross's eyes met hers. I never wanted to be part of this. But once you found Holloway's work, there was no stopping it. No stopping them. I'm trying to keep you safe, Emma. You're playing a dangerous game. Then help us, Emma demanded, taking a step toward him. Help us stop it. For a long moment, Cross said nothing. The silence in the room was deafening, filled only with the hum of the machine. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. You don't understand. This isn't just about stopping it. Once the machine is activated, it's already in motion. It's already too late. What do you mean? Emma asked, her voice growing frantic. What happens now? What have we done? Cross's eyes flickered toward the two men standing behind him, and for the first time, Emma saw something like fear in his eyes. It's already begun. They'll be coming for it. They'll stop at nothing to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And now, you're in the middle of it. Emma's mind raced as she tried to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. They had unlocked something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Holloway's machine was more than just an invention. It was the gateway to a global power struggle, and now, they were at the center of it all. What do we do now? Alex asked, her voice trembling with fear. Cross's expression darkened. Now, we run. If you want any chance of surviving this, you have to get out of here. Now.